I said that the 28th, Sunday the 28th, is going to be a busy Sunday with a pastoral candidate coming. And in the evening, we have the concert with the Presence Music Band at the Ely State Theater. And that same morning, we're going to be having a baptism. So we'll do that right up here. We could go out to a lake, but that's more movement and trying to get all of you there. And it's getting a little chilly. Now, it's not too bad. In fact, most baptisms, being a former camp director, most baptisms I've done have been in November in a lake. You build a great big fire, you get all warmed up, you do all the preliminaries there, and then you run out into the water and do it fast. So we can take our time on the 28th. If you have not been baptized, and that's something that you want to consider, call me. Get a hold of me. We can walk through that and make sure we understand what that's all about, and you can join in on those festivities on the 28th. Another announcement I forgot is we got some cool stuff going on at the college. Next Saturday night is our first community dinner. So that's for all of us. Everyone be there, bring your friends. Following the community dinner, we'll have our first college Bible study, and we'll go on from there and find out how often they want to meet. You will also see out in the foyer a bin where you can put stuff for college kids. We have some from Florida and South Carolina. I don't know if you guys brought all your good winter stuff, but not all of them do. And if you've got extra winter clothes, put them in there. Put in dorm food, we call it, in the bin there. I brought a whole bunch of that over to the college last Wednesday, and it was gone right away. The boots and a bunch of the winter clothes never made it into the closet. It was gone straight from the bin. College folks that are here now, there's a little bit out in the bin. People have already put in stuff this morning. You get first dibs. It's not over at the college yet, so take a look at what's in there. Might be some good dorm food. So, lots of stuff. Great college ministry going on, and you can all be part of that. Also, in prep for the potential coming of a new pastor, I want to encourage you, the elders and I want to encourage you to be praying some concerted prayer that indeed we will have leading from God's Spirit, and that this potential pastor family will also have a clear sense of God's leading. And to encourage you in that, next Friday night, we'll try to get an email out on this, next Friday night and then Thursday of the following week, back in the family room there, some of us are just going to be there. And if you want to come and join us in prayer, and it doesn't have to be just on those times, you'll see in the family room kind of a prayer guide, a little help on, okay, what are things going on at LedgeRock in addition to the potential coming of a new pastor that we can be praying about. So those helps are there. There. All of the announcements are done. We are in the book of Esther. Last week we started our new series. You perhaps have had a chance to read through it already. It's not that long of a book. Sit down and read the whole story sometime in one chunk. Last week we learned just kind of contextually where this is at. Esther is after Daniel, even though the book appears, before Daniel in our Bibles. Daniel's long gone. Several of the kings are long gone. And now we have King Xerxes. And that is the context that Esther is growing up in. You remember she's a fairly young gal. Her parents had both died. We don't have any information on that as to what happened. And she's being raised by her cousin named Mordecai. Now, some of you have got families like that where it's like, well, wait a minute, they're cousins. Aren't they kind of the same age? Well, not in this case. And some of you have got families like that where you may have a cousin that's really a generation off from you. And in chapter 2 is where we are this morning. We're going to learn a little bit about a side story. There's lots of side stories in history. For example, the main story is that Samuel Morse was driven to develop a new, faster method of long-distance communication, which resulted in the invention of the telegraph and Morse code. That's the main story. That's the main story that we all hear. But the side story is that while Samuel Morse was working in Washington, D.C., his wife had died suddenly at their home in New Haven, Connecticut. And due to the slow pace of communication back at that time, he didn't receive the letter saying that his wife was gravely ill until after the funeral, after she had been buried. And that's what motivated him to figure out there's got to be a better way to communicate quicker, and we get the telegraph and Morse code. The main story is that in June of 1999, James Blunt, then a captain in the military, received orders to attack the Russian army defending Serbian forces. And rather than risk the possibility of starting World War III, Captain Blunt refused the order, knowing that he could face a court-martial for such an offense. Now, cooler heads prevailed, and leaders realized that he may have prevented World War III, and they didn't court-martial him. The side story, though, is James Blunt, famous musician, contemporary musician, songwriter. He's got several awards, both in the States and in England here, as James Blunt. He's got great music. If you haven't looked it up, look it up on YouTube. He's got great stuff. The main story is that on November 22nd, 1963, John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. You all remember? The side story is that the decision was made by campaign managers to have the top of the convertible down so that the president and his wife could be seen by the maximum number of people in the Texas crowd who were not yet sold on this new president. It would also allow Lee Harvey Oswald a clear view to assassinate the president. Side story is that decision was made by some campaign managers. The main story is that in 1862, during the American Civil War, the war was going well for the Confederacy, for the South. And both France and Britain were even on the verge of recognizing the Confederacy as a separate nation. One more big win would have decided the war in favor of the Confederacy. And with that in mind, General Robert E. Lee launched the Maryland Campaign, where for the first time they invaded the North. They were on the offensive. And he drafted marching orders for all of his generals called Special Order 191. And given the sensitive nature of the information, General Lee made it clear that the generals needed to take great care with their copies of Special Order 191. That's the main story. The side story is that on September 13th, a few Union soldiers were resting in a meadow outside of Frederick, Maryland, and they found 3 cigars wrapped in a piece of paper lying on the ground. And the papers were a copy of the Special Order 191, revealing the Southern troop movements, and the resulting victory of the North changed the tide of the war. In our text this morning, we're going to learn of a side story that at first seems to be a side note to this greater story. It just seems to be dropped in there. Not sure why, but it ends up having great consequences. Our main point this morning, I think we have it on the screen. Our main point this morning is don't ever think that your story is inconsequential. Remember, God is always working. That's kind of been a theme that we've had for several weeks, isn't it? God is always working. I don't always think he is. I don't always see it. But God's always working, even in my inconsequential side stories. Well, let's read chapter 2 of Esther. You'll see it on the screen there as well. But if you need a copy of the scriptures, there's lots of free Bibles out on the tables. Please grab them. We are going to read the entire chapter. It's not that long. Esther, chapter 2. You remember that Queen Vashti is gone. She's off the scene. Now later, when the anger of King Xerxes had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what he had decreed about her. Then the king's personal attendants proposed, "Let a search be made for beautiful young virgin for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in every province of his realm to bring all these beautiful girls into the harem at the citadel of Susa. Let them be placed under the care of Hegai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and let beautiful treatments be given to them. Then let the then let the girl who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti." And this advice appealed to the king, and he followed it. Now, there was in the citadel of Susa a Jew from the tribe of Benjamin named Mordecai, son of Jar, son of Simeon, son of Kish, who had been carried into exile from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, among those taken captive with Jehoiakim, king of Judah. Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This girl, who was also known as Esther, was lovely in form and features, and Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother had died. When the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many girls were brought to the citadel of Susa and put under the care of Hegai. Esther, who was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Hegai, who had charge over the harem. The girl pleased him and won his favor, and immediately he provided her with beauty treatments and special food. He assigned to her 7 maids selected from the king's palace and moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem. Esther had not revealed her nationality and the family background because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. Every day, it's Mordecai, walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening. Before a girl's turn came to go into the king Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 with perfumes and cosmetics. And this is how she would go into the king. Anything she wanted was given her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening she would go there, and in the morning return to another part of the harem to the care of Shashagaz, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the concubines. She would not return to the king unless he was pleased with her and summoned her by name. When the turn came for Esther, the girl Mordecai had adopted, the daughter of his uncle Abihail, to go to the king, she asked for nothing more than what Hegai, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the harem, suggested. And Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. She was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence in the 10th month of Tebeth, the 7th year of his reign. Now the king was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. And the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all of his nobles and officials, and he proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed the gifts with royal liberality. When the virgins were assembled a second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. But Esther had kept secret her family background and nationality, just as Mordecai had told her to do, for she continued to follow Mordecai's instructions as she had done when he was bringing her up. And then here's the side story. During the time Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthana and Teresh, 2 of the king's officers who had guarded the doorway, became angry and conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. But Mordecai found out about the plot and told Queen Esther, who in turn reported it to the king, giving credit to Mordecai. And when the report was investigated and found to be true, the 2 officials were hanged on the gallows. All of this was recorded in the book of the annals in the presence of the king. We're going to deal with the side story, the plot to assassinate King Xerxes, but first we need to note that Esther becomes queen. Apparently, Xerxes got lonesome for a queen. Now, forgive my, I'll be careful here, but given that he already had concubines, my guess is he probably just realized that having a queen is a good thing to have. Perhaps it was better optics in the kingdom. Every now and then I think about running for president of the United States. And Debbie says, a candidate in the midst of a divorce couldn't get elected. So, thus ends my political career. Whatever the reasons, whether he truly was lonesome for a queen or he just thought, oh, it would look better not to be a bachelor king, Esther becomes the queen. A search is made for the entire kingdom of the most beautiful young women who will be brought to the capital city, Susa, for training to meet the king. Look at verse 5. Before the narrative introduces Esther, we meet Mordecai, her older cousin, who's cared for her since her parents had died. Now, the way Mordecai is introduced is really fascinating. It's important, and it'll tie in directly when we get to chapter 3. We're told that Mordecai was from the tribe of Benjamin. Now, the Jews from the tribe of Benjamin were a proud people. They were a proud tribe. They were known for their ability to fight. They were great soldiers, and for having sort of a rebellious nature about them. And more importantly, their association, the tribe of Benjamin, with supplying the very first king of Israel came from the tribe of Benjamin, King Saul. And so they hung on to that. Now, like I said, when we get to chapter 3, just remember that, because that will have a fascinating tie-in that Mordecai was from the tribe of Benjamin. But the important part of the story is that Esther is caught up in this roundup of young women. Her real name is Hadassah because she's a Jew. And Mordecai instructs her, let's keep that a secret. That name is too Jewish. Now, the Jews have been in Persia for many, many generations. During Nehemiah's writing and Ezra's writing, you remember the kings of Babylon allow several movements to go back to Israel, but not all of the Jews did. They had been there for many generations. They had businesses. They had families. They would remain expats. Not everyone would go back, and that's part of Mordecai's and Hadassah's legacy. They were still foreigners, even though had been there for generations, living in a foreign land. And Hadassah follows Mordecai's counsel throughout the entire training and preparation that these young women receive, and she keeps her ethnicity a secret. Now, some notes on this training. Oh my word, it is a year-long beauty school. Training and treatments. 6 months of skin conditioning with oil of myrrh, followed by another 6 months of cosmetics and perfume treatments and training. Some of you women might be thinking, that would be amazing. It would be heaven. Our youngest daughter is an esthetician. It's taken me forever to learn to say that. That's a skincare person. She did all the cosmetics and then went another level into that. And all these different skin treatments. Oh, my word, her bathroom and her office looks like a chemistry set. I mean, there's just all of these oils and way more stuff than I can understand. Now, there may have been other things taught during this time. Certainly, there was training in royal etiquette and protocol, probably an education in Persian customs and how the government works. And for the sake of discretion, let me just say there might have been instructions in intimate pleasures. We don't know. The text seems to infer it to our ears, but I would caution us a little bit not to infer into the text what isn't explicitly there or intended to be inferred. Now, if Esther, in that training, had been learning some intimate practices, let's remember that she was a captive slave under guard and imprisoned by a manic king. Now, during this time, Esther hides her nationality and her real name, Hadassah, and we can see here hints of what's going to come. Hints of some anti-Semitism in Persia that Mordecai was trying to protect Esther from. Now, look at verses 8 and 9. I think it's fascinating that Esther won the favor of her captor supervisor, Haggai. Why? What was it about Esther that made him go, oh, this girl is special. This girl is different? We don't know. We note in the previous verses that Esther was very obedient and respectful to her older cousin Mordecai. It seems that she had a very pleasant and kind nature. That's probably a good example for us, that it was perhaps her kindness and gentleness that caught the attention of really all those around her. Like I said, that's probably a good example for us. I doubt anyone won the favor of their captors or others because of their contentious or angry nature. I doubt that anyone has ever said, you know, I really admire that man because he is just angry and flies off the handle all the time. I really admire that woman because she's always complaining and talking gossip. Now, we know that the rest of the part of the story is that Esther becomes queen, and it would seem, I think, that her gentle spirit had won the heart of the king, just like it had softened the hearts of her guards. The king crowns her. There's a royal banquet. He declares a holiday after her, a holiday called Esther Day, and there's music, and there's singing, and there's dancing, and there's songs written for her. Esther Day. Today we're celebrating Esther Day. I'll stop. I'm sorry. Now comes our side story. Mordecai's in the habit of hanging out near Esther's quarters. He's worried about her. He's concerned about her, and he's picking up news as to how's it going, what's going on there. And while he's there, he overhears a plot to assassinate the king. Two of the guards are upset with something. They're angry, and they're angry at Xerxes. I'm sure there was something that happened that just wasn't fair. We're the grunt laborers. We do all the work. Don't know. But enough, they're upset enough that they come up with a plot to assassinate the king. And Mordecai overhears it, and he gets word to Esther, who gets word to the king. Now, the king's secret service investigates it. They find out that it's true, and these two guards are hung. Actually, it's worse than that. They didn't hang people in Persia during this time. And what they meant by the gallows was just a very tall, sharpened pole. And those that were hung would be impaled on that pole and set up for all the city to see. And that's what happened. That horrific practice will come into play later in our epic story of Esther. That horrific practice. And for this tremendous service to the king, Mordecai is celebrated as a hero. Or not. What's done for Mordecai? I mean, he's just saved the life of the king. And what's done for Mordecai? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Should he have expected something? Well, you would think so. But nothing happens. Have you ever experienced that? Oh, but I should get recognized. I deserve more. This isn't fair. Your kids say that all the time, but we as adults often do as well. I've done really things for God. Yeah, we've all experienced this. But what's your motivation in doing what's right? If you knew you were not going to receive any benefit, would you still do the right thing? I hope so. What's the purpose of doing right? Well, we do right because it's right, and that's what God requires. Most of you know Micah 6:8, where the prophet says, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." Realize that was written in a time of a lot of rabbinical laws, a lot of Levitical laws. Oh, this kind of sacrifice, this kind of celebration of different feasts and festivals. Oh, this kind of act of worship and this kind of prayer. And in Micah, God says, "I'm so sick and tired of your sacrifices." Because what does he really want? Act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And Mordecai is such a great example of that. Recognition and revenge are both in God's hands. You don't know the behind-the-scenes mysteries that are being played out, so simply assume that God is doing more than you know. Now, Mordecai's act of saving the life of the king will come into play later. We know this, but Mordecai doesn't. We don't seem to have any indication of anger or disappointment from Mordecai. He simply accepts it. And where does chapter 2 end? The last verse, verse 23, "And when the report was investigated and found to be true, the two officials were hanged on the gallows. All of this was recorded in the book of the annals in the presence of the king." That's it. That's a terrible ending to a story. I mean, how unsatisfying. And why is it unsatisfying? Because we don't know what God is doing. We assume we deserve to know. We assume that if we don't know, it means that God isn't working. And that is pure arrogance. Something unfair happens and we think God, not you. Something unfair happens and we think, God, you are not good. And in doing so, we can miss beautiful lessons that God wants to teach us. It's not fair that I lost 2 years in a hospital bed. But the gift of 2 years in a hospital bed allowed me to learn things about the goodness of God that I couldn't have learned anywhere else. It's not fair that I was fired for no reason and people said untrue things, but the gift of being treated unethically softens the heart to the hurt of others. It's not fair that I never got married and I've been single all these years. But the gift of singleness has allowed you the freedom to follow Christ wherever he may call you. That's why the Apostle Paul says that I recommend you stay single so you can move at the drop of a hat when God says move. But it's not fair that, fill in the blank. All I know is that I'm not smart enough to tell God what is and what is not fair. I simply trust. You can trust that God is always working. The end of this chapter, the end of the story here is so unsatisfying. Okay, Esther becomes queen. That's great. Mordecai saves the life of the king. End of story. But there's more. You can trust that God is always working. That's the main story. And it just might be me that he's working on. That's the side story. Don't miss the side story. What is God teaching you? What are you going through right now that in fact might be a gift that God is using to teach you more and more about him? Perhaps that's what happens between chapters 2 and 3, where Mordecai contemplates, well, I guess Esther's still safe. Save the life of the king. I guess we just go back to business as usual, selling the goods that Mordecai sells. But I wonder what God is doing. And Mordecai begins to get to see in chapter 3. You and I are in that place. Maybe something is going on where we say, I don't know. I guess it's life as normal. No, when I have a relationship with Jesus, life is never normal. There's always something going on behind the scenes. And I'm going to do my best to learn what it is God is teaching me in whatever I'm going through. And perhaps, yet in this lifetime, I'll get to see the glory of the side story. Let me pray for us. Father, we thank you for the season of time that this church is in, for the time that we've come through and trying to figure out how do we best serve you in the midst of lots of changes. In a time where we confess, Father, that sometimes we questioned. But Father, thank you for reminding us through your word that you are always working. Help us to learn what it is that we need to learn during the side story so that we'll be ready to celebrate when we get to see the larger, most important story. In your most precious name, amen.